The night air tasted of iron and exhaust. Red and blue lights pulsed against the rain-slick asphalt, painting the man's trembling hands as he held them out beside the car door. "Step out of the vehicle." The voice was sharp, cold. Officer Kellen Ward didn't blink. The badge on his chest caught the streetlight, and the power behind it felt absolute. Across from him, Elijah Brooks, broad-shouldered, still in his worksuit, moved slowly. His son sat frozen in the back seat, eyes wide behind fogged glasses. The boy whispered something Elijah couldn't answer. His throat was tight, his heartbeat too loud. "I said step out." Elijah obeyed, calm, controlled. But inside him, something twisted. Not fear, not yet, but the memory of every time he'd told his students that patience was protection. Ward circled him like a hunter. "You think a fancy car makes you different? What are you, some kind of lawyer?" Elijah said quietly. "I'm going home to my son." The officer smirked. "Not tonight, you're not." The flashlight tilted upward, catching Elijah's face, the rain on his cheek, the quiet defiance in his eyes. Then Ward said it, the line that cut deeper than any weapon. "People like you should remember who's in charge." The world went still. A phone began recording from across the street. The boy in the car whispered, "Dad." Elijah turned his head slightly, just enough to look into the beam of light, into Ward's eyes. Something shifted there, a recognition too late, because from the shadows beyond the flashing lights, a black sedan had pulled up, and from it stepped the state attorney general. "Elijah," she called, voice sharp with disbelief. "Chief Justice Brooks, what the hell is going on?" The rain kept falling. Ward's hand was still on his gun. Rain whispered against the windshield, steady, relentless. The wipers scraped a slow rhythm as Elijah Brooks steered through the dim suburban stretch outside Baltimore. His son, Jordan, sat quiet in the back seat, earbuds dangling but no music playing. The boy watched the world through the drizzled streetlights, smearing gold across the wet glass. It was late, too late for a stoplight to flash red this long. Then came the siren, a shrill, tearing sound that cracked the calm in half. Elijah's hands tightened around the wheel before his mind even caught up. He exhaled slowly. "It's okay," he murmured. "Just the police." Jordan leaned forward. "Did we do something?" "No." Elijah checked the mirror. A patrol car glowed behind them, headlights cutting through the rain. "Seatbelt on." "Yes, sir." Elijah eased the car toward the shoulder, indicator blinking. The rain thickened, smearing the blue-red flicker that washed over their faces. He put the car in park, both hands visible on the wheel, windows down halfway. Standard ritual, learned long ago. The officer approached, heavy boots, flashlight beam trembling just enough to show adrenaline. The name tag caught the light. "Ward, evening." Officer Elijah said evenly, "License and registration." Ward's tone wasn't a request. Elijah passed the documents through the gap, slow and visible. Ward didn't take them right away. His flashlight lingered on Elijah's skin, his tie, the gold ring, the kid in the back seat. "What's the rush tonight?" Ward asked. "No rush, officer. Just heading home. You came off Maple pretty fast." "I was under the limit." Ward's smile was thin. "You a lawyer?" Elijah blinked once. "No." Ward leaned closer. "Because you sound like one." Jordan shifted. Elijah said softly, "It's fine, son." Ward's eyes flicked toward the boy, then back. "Where are you coming from?" "Ellicott Courthouse." That got a pause. The officer tilted his head. "Courthouse? Huh. You in trouble, or just visiting?" Elijah didn't answer. The silence stretched. Rain on metal. Distant hum of tires. Ward tapped the roof with his flashlight. "Step out of the vehicle." Jordan's voice cracked. "Dad." "It's okay," Elijah said again. He stepped out, slow and steady, hands open. The chill of the air hit like a slap. Ward positioned him by the hood. "You carrying any weapons?" "No." "Mind if I check?" "I do mind, but I won't resist." That made Ward grin. "You people always know the lines, don't you?" Elijah stared past him, jaw set. Ward's radio crackled. "Unit 12. Traffic stop. Possible obstruction." "Obstruction," Elijah said quietly. "For existing." Ward ignored him, circling the car. He shone the beam into the back seat again. "What's your name, kid?" Jordan didn't answer. "Hey," Ward snapped. "I asked." "Don't speak to my son," Elijah said. Ward turned, flashlight beam slicing across Elijah's face. "You telling me how to do my job?" "No," Elijah replied. "Just asking for respect." Ward's nostrils flared. The pause that followed was heavy with something old and ugly, resentment born long before this night. Then came the words, low and deliberate. People like you should remember who's in charge. Jordan's breath hitched. Elijah's spine straightened. His eyes stayed on Ward's, calm on the surface. But his pulse drummed in his ears. From across the street, a phone camera blinked red. Someone was recording. Ward noticed. His jaw tightened. Get back. He barked toward the bystander, but the lens didn't move. A sedan rolled up, engine soft beneath the rain. The passenger door opened. Heels struck pavement. Officer Ward, a woman's voice cut through the night. What the hell are you doing? Ward turned, irritation half formed till he saw her face. The state attorney general. And behind her, another man stepped out, umbrella lifted. Press corps, hair wire rim glasses, clipboard clutched to his chest. Elijah Brooks, the attorney general said, disbelief and fury tangling in her tone. Chief Justice Brooks, why are you outside your car with your hands up? The world compressed into silence. Ward's flashlight trembled. Chief, what? Elijah didn't move. Officer Ward, he said evenly, you may want to lower your weapon. Ward looked down as if the gun had materialized by itself. His hand was on the holster, fingers half curled. Slowly, he stepped back. The attorney general's voice sharpened. Turn off your body cam, ma'am. I now. He obeyed. Rain still fell, slow and merciless. Reporters were already running toward the lights, phones out, voices calling names. Elijah stood motionless, every muscle coiled. He could feel Jordan's eyes on him from the car, the boy's small silhouette against flashing colors. One wrong breath, and the night could shatter. The attorney general turned to him, whispering, Elijah, let's get you out of here. But he didn't move yet. His gaze stayed on Ward, on the disbelief, the dawning horror crawling across the officer's face. Because now Ward saw it. The man he had tried to humiliate was the highest judicial authority in the state, the man who signed the ethics rulings that shaped careers. Elijah finally spoke, voice low and clear enough to cut through the rain. Remember this moment, officer. Remember who you see when the badge is gone. The cameras flashed. Ward's hand fell to his side, useless. In the car, Jordan pressed his palm to the glass. His father didn't see. The boy's reflection blurred in the light, eyes wide, mouth trembling. Somewhere behind them, a news van door slammed. Microphones lifted. The attorney general put a hand on Elijah's arm. Come, before they twist this. He let her lead him toward her car, step steady, face unreadable. Behind them, Ward stood alone beside his cruiser, red and blue, strobing across his pale, wet skin. The radio crackled again, asking for a status update. He couldn't speak. He just stared at the dark silhouette of the man driving away. The man whose name would fill every screen by morning. Elijah's car vanished into the mist, taillights fading like embers. And somewhere deep in Ward's chest, a cold, crawling fear began to spread. The footage hit the networks before dawn, grainy, rain-streaked, shaky from a phone camera but unmistakable. The line echoed across every platform within hours. People like you should remember who's in charge. By morning, the phrase was a headline, a hashtag, a wound. Elijah Brooks sat in his kitchen, watching the news with the sound off. The images flickered silently on the screen, his own face frozen under the glare of police lights, his son's shadowed expression in the backseat. The anchor's lips moved, words he didn't need to hear. The kettle whistled. He didn't move to stop it. Jordan came in, small feet dragging against tile. Dad, he said, voice hushed. Everyone's talking about it. Elijah turned from the window. I know. Did you get him fired? Elijah knelt. That's not my decision. But you could. He paused. The truth was unbearable. Even justice has a process. Jordan frowned, eyes wet. He talked to you like you were nothing. Elijah reached out, cupping the back of his son's neck. And what did I do? You didn't yell. You didn't do anything. I stayed alive, Elijah said softly. That was enough. Jordan looked down. I hate that it has to be. The silence hung between them, thick, honest, final. Outside, cameras clustered along the curb, voices murmuring through the drizzle. Elijah's phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, colleagues, clerks, even former students. Statement, comment, condemnation. He ignored all of them. When the doorbell rang, the house tensed. Elijah opened it to find Attorney General Marion Reeves' tired eyes, umbrella dripping. Elijah, she said, stepping inside, you're trending worldwide. I gathered. They suspended him. Ward, internal review pending. Elijah's face stayed unreadable. They'll reinstate him in 2 weeks. Marion sighed. You're probably right. He gestured toward the TV. They're not talking about him. They're talking about how calm I was, like restraint is proof of virtue. You know how this goes. Yes, I've been watching it my whole life. Marian hesitated. The governor's office wants you to make a statement, something measured. Healing, they said. Elijah turned his head slowly. Healing for whom? She had no answer. Jordan stood at the hallway edge, listening. His small face, silent and still, absorbed every word. When Marian left, Elijah switched off his phone. The air filled with the hum of the refrigerator and the distant buzz of helicopters overhead. He went to his study, closing the door behind him. On the wall hung a photo of him years ago, graduation day from law school. Younger, hopeful, a different country. It seemed. He sat, hands clasped, staring at the papers on his desk. Draft opinions on ethics reform. A pending decision about police oversight. Words that now felt hollow. The knock came again. Softer this time. Jordan peeked in. Dad, yes, I had a nightmare. Elijah gestured him closer. Jordan climbed onto his lap, tucking under his arm. The boy smelled of rain and sleep. Was it about the officer? Jordan nodded. Double quotes. What happened in it? He kept saying we didn't belong, and nobody stopped him. Elijah swallowed. His throat burned. Dreams don't last, he said. But it looked real. I know, Jordan whispered. Are you still the Chief Justice? For now. The boy looked up. Then can you make them stop doing that? Elijah didn't answer. He stared past the child, at the window streaked with dawn light. I can try, he said finally, voice breaking on the last word. The clock ticked. The city outside stirred. Helicopters still circled. Somewhere, someone was already debating his tone, his posture, his restraint, while another man slept uneasily in a police barracks, telling himself it had all been a misunderstanding. Elijah pressed a hand to his temple. He felt the pulse beneath his skin, a reminder of both fury and fatigue. In the hallway, the phone rang again, persistent, mechanical, unfeeling. He let it ring. Marian's voice echoed faintly in memory. You know how this goes. He did. He knew that tomorrow they'd ask him to forgive, to smile for the cameras, to speak of unity. They'd call him dignified. They'd call the video unfortunate. They'd call Ward a good man who made a mistake. And then they'd move on. But Jordan wouldn't, and neither would he. Elijah looked down at his son's sleeping face. The boy's small hands were curled tight, as if still bracing against flashing lights. Rest, he whispered. Tomorrow, we start writing it down. Because if the system refused to remember, Elijah Brooks would make sure it was recorded, word for word, from the beginning. Outside, the rain began again, and this time, it sounded like applause. The official statement from the Baltimore Police Department arrived before sunrise. The department values integrity, accountability, and community trust. Officer Kellen Ward has been placed on temporary administrative leave pending an internal review. Elijah read the words twice. They were sterile, rehearsed, designed to cool the fire without extinguishing it. Across the breakfast table, the newspaper headline glared, Justice stops here. Chief Justice Brooks in viral police stop. Jordan pushed his cereal around the bowl. Silent, eat, Elijah said softly. Everyone's saying stuff at school, Jordan murmured. Some kids said you were the reason their dad's mad. Elijah's stomach tightened. Did you tell them who your father is? I didn't have to. The silence stretched. Elijah folded the paper, sliding it aside. Remember what I told you, he said. We don't explain our existence to anyone. Jordan nodded, eyes down. The doorbell rang. Elijah didn't need to guess who it was. Two men in dark suits entered. Public relations officers from the Judicial Council. One carried a manila folder, the other, a smile, too polished to trust. Justice Brooks, the first said, we appreciate your cooperation. The governor and the chief of police are both urging restraint while tensions calm. Elijah leaned back in his chair. Restraint is the only thing that kept me alive, gentlemen. The man with the folder cleared his throat. With respect, sir. Public sentiment is volatile. If you were to issue a statement acknowledging the officer's apology, Elijah interrupted, has one been offered? Not officially, the man admitted, but it would help public optics if you appeared magnanimous. Optics, Elijah repeated quietly. That's the word you use when truth is inconvenient. The second man tried to smile again. We're managing this carefully. The department's morale is fragile. You know how unions get. Elijah stood, chair scraping against tile. You mean they get defensive when accountability knocks? The men exchanged a glance. Sir, If you escalate, I'm not escalating anything, Elijah said, voice low, steady. I'm existing, and apparently that's controversial enough. They left, without shaking hands. Jordan watched from the hallway. They sounded scared. He said, they should be by afternoon. Ward's union had released their own statement. Officer Ward acted in accordance with standard procedure. The encounter only became hostile due to the Chief Justice's refusal to comply promptly. We stand by our officer. The words spread faster than the truth. Talk shows filled with commentators dissecting Elijah's demeanor. Some called him confrontational. Others said he weaponized his status. At the courthouse, whispers replaced greetings. Clerks stopped mid-conversation when he entered. One younger judge muttered under his breath, "Now every cop will think twice before doing his job." Elijah stopped walking. "You think his job is intimidation?" The hallway went still. The young judge looked away. Later, in chambers, Marion Reeves closed the door behind her. "You're not helping yourself," she said. "I'm not here to help myself." She sat. "The governor wants peace. You push this any further, it becomes a political war." "It already is." "Elijah," he cut her off. "If the highest seat in this state can be humiliated on the side of the road, what happens to the people with no cameras, no witnesses?" Her voice softened. "You can't fix it all." "No, but I can stop pretending it's not broken." Marion stared at him for a long moment. "They're scared of you right now. Use that carefully." He gave a small, humorless smile. "Fear has never been the foundation of justice." That evening, Ward sat in his small apartment, uniform jacket slung over a chair. The television replayed the video again and again. His wife Lisa stood behind him, arms folded. "You're not sleeping," she said. "I didn't do anything wrong," Ward muttered. "I was doing my job." "Then why won't the union lawyer call back?" He didn't answer. The TV showed Elijah's calm face under flashing lights. The internet had christened him the silent judge. Ward clenched his fists. "He's playing it for sympathy." Lisa's eyes narrowed. "He didn't have to play anything. You said that line yourself. Kellen." He slammed a hand on the table. "He provoked me by being alive," she snapped. The silence afterward was suffocating. Ward turned off the TV, stood, paced. "I'll clear my name. Internal Affairs knows what this is politics." Lisa didn't move. "You humiliated a man in front of his child, and now you want pity." Ward spun toward her. "He's the Chief Justice, Lisa. He could end me. Maybe you ended yourself." He glared. "Don't start taking their side." "I'm taking the side of right and wrong," she said quietly, "and I don't think you know which is which anymore." Ward looked away. His hands trembled. That night, Elijah returned to his study. He opened a blank legal pad, writing the first line with deliberate strokes. Case study, power, fear, and the cost of survival. Below it, he wrote, "Every courtroom is built on the assumption that truth can stand without fear. Tonight, that assumption is dead." He closed the notebook. Down the hall, Jordan's door was cracked open. The boy was asleep, clutching a flashlight. As if ready for another stop in his dreams, Elijah lingered in the doorway, the sound of distant thunder filling the house. Tomorrow, he knew, there would be meetings, committees, attempts to contain the narrative, but something inside him had already shifted. He wasn't going to let them bury it this time. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. Silence had a way of amplifying what couldn't be said. Elijah sat on the couch, watching the muted flicker of a nature documentary. Lions pacing across a savanna he couldn't hear. His suit jacket hung limp over a chair, coffee untouched. Jordan entered, backpack slung low, eyes heavy. "They called you something at school," he said flatly. Elijah muted the TV. "What did they call me?" "The judge who played the race card." Elijah's hands still. "And what did you do?" "I told them you didn't have to play anything. You just lived it." He wanted to be proud. He wanted to smile. Instead, he felt something hollow crack deeper inside. "That's not your burden, son." "But it feels like it is," Jordan whispered. "Everyone looks at me like I'm trouble. Even teachers." Elijah stood and crossed the room. "You're not trouble. They act like it." He sighed. "That's not about you. That's about what they've been taught to see." Jordan looked up. "So how do you fix that?" "You don't fix people's vision," Elijah said. "You force them to look closer." Jordan frowned. "You sound like your speeches." "Those speeches didn't stop a man from putting his hand on his gun." Jordan sat on the arm of the couch. "Then what's the point of being powerful if it doesn't protect you?" The question hung in the air. Elijah had no answer ready. "Power doesn't change how they see you," he said finally. "It only changes how loudly they lie about it." Later that night, Elijah found himself outside, barefoot on the porch, phone lighting his face. Headlines rolled endlessly. Ward's union doubles down. Governor calls for calm. Nation divided. He scrolled past the noise, opened a message thread. It was from a number saved years ago. Father deceased. He hadn't deleted it. Couldn't. He whispered into the rain. You were right. They still don't see the robe, just the color under it. The wind answered for him soft, then gone. Jordan appeared in the doorway, blanket around his shoulders. Dad, you're talking to yourself. I'm talking to him, Elijah said, nodding upward. Your grandfather. Jordan padded out beside him. You miss him. Every day. What would he tell you to do? Elijah smiled faintly. He'd tell me to keep walking, even when the road feels like glass. Jordan leaned against him. You think people change? Some. Most learn how to hide better. They stood there in silence, two shadows in the drizzle, watching city lights blink across the horizon. The next morning, Elijah drove Jordan to school. The car's quiet hum filled the space where conversation should have been. At the drop-off lane, Jordan hesitated. Do you think they'll ever stop seeing us like that? Elijah looked straight ahead. I think someday, someone will see you first and the fear second. Jordan nodded, then said softly, I want to be like you. Elijah turned. No. Be better. Jordan managed a small smile and stepped out. Elijah watched until the boy disappeared into the building. Swallowed by the crowd, for a moment, he saw flashes his own youth, his father's words, his son's future all in one frame. Then he drove away. That afternoon, Marian called. You've been quiet, she said. Listening. To what? The country breathing through its teeth. She sighed. You're poetic when you're angry. I'm not angry, Elijah said. I'm tired. Then rest. I can't. He's still on payroll. Marian hesitated. Internal Affairs says 2 weeks until the hearing. Then, in 2 weeks, Elijah said, the silence ends. That evening, Elijah came home to find Jordan at the dining table, notebook open. What are you writing? Jordan looked up. A letter to that officer. Elijah froze. Why? Because I want to tell him what it felt like. Elijah walked closer. Read it. Jordan's voice shook, but he read anyway. Dear Officer Ward, when you told my dad to step out of the car, I thought you were going to kill him. I didn't breathe for a whole minute. You didn't see me, but I saw you. I saw how you looked at him, like he was smaller. But he's the biggest person I know. He didn't yell because he wanted me to see what control looks like. I think you wanted to make him afraid. But you can't scare someone who's already seen everything you can do. You just made me promise to never be you. Elijah's throat closed. He placed a hand on the notebook. Keep it, he said quietly. Don't send it. Why not? Because the truth doesn't belong to him anymore. It belongs to you. Jordan stared at him, confused but listening. Elijah smiled faintly. Someday, you'll write something else, something bigger, and maybe then, they'll hear it. Jordan folded the page, slipping it into his backpack. Elijah turned off the light. The house sank into silence again. But it felt different now, not heavy, not hollow, a waiting kind of silence, the kind that comes right before change. The hearing was held in a cramped, municipal courtroom, cheap wood paneling, flickering fluorescent light, microphones that hummed before every word. Reporters crowded the back rows. The front was lined with uniforms, lawyers, and the curious public. Elijah Brooks arrived quietly, dark suit, no entourage, no cameras trailing him, only a steady, deliberate walk down the aisle that made people fall silent as he passed. Officer Kellen Ward sat at the defense table, jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward. His lawyer whispered instructions, but Ward barely heard. The air felt too heavy, too sharp. The review board chair, a woman in her 60s with gray hair and wire-framed glasses, cleared her throat. We are here to determine whether Officer Ward's conduct on the night of April 3rd violated departmental policy or ethical standards. The clerk read the charges: misconduct, verbal abuse, racial bias, threat of force. Ward stared at the table. The words didn't sound real anymore, just noise. When the floor opened for testimony, the chair turned toward Elijah. Chief Justice Brooks, you may proceed. He stood. The room rustled. Even those who had seen the footage leaned forward. The man they'd watched silent on screen now had a voice. Thank you, Elijah began. I won't repeat what the world already saw. The footage speaks for itself. I'm here because silence, even dignified silence, becomes complicity when repeated too long. Ward's lawyer rose. Objection, this sounds like a speech. The chair held up a hand. Overruled. Continue. Elijah nodded. When Officer Ward stopped me, I complied. I did what generations before me were taught to do: move slowly, speak calmly, make no sudden gestures, not because I feared guilt, but because I feared perception. He turned his head, looking directly at Ward. He saw a threat where there was only fatigue. He saw disrespect where there was only restraint. The courtroom was still, except for the hum of the lights. "I'm not here to destroy him," Elijah said. "I'm here to describe what survival looks like when the system designed to protect you only protects your compliance." The board members shifted uneasily. Ward's lawyer scribbled notes. Elijah finished simply, "We can't rebuild trust on denial." Then he sat down. The chair gestured to Ward. "Officer Ward, you may respond." Ward stood slowly. His hands trembled, but he kept his voice steady. "I didn't mean any disrespect that night. I was following protocol," the chair asked. "Yes, ma'am. High-risk stop, suspicious vehicle, tinted windows, late hour. Suspicious how?" Ward hesitated. "Well, the neighborhood." "Go on," he faltered. "It was dark. I couldn't see the driver's hands clearly." Elijah's lawyer brought in for procedural supports, spoke quietly. "Officer Ward, the dashcam shows both hands visible the entire time." Ward's throat tightened. "Maybe so, but tone and attitude matter." "He was," Elijah interrupted, "calm, but sharp." "Calm." Ward stopped. "What? You mean I was calm?" Elijah said. "That was the problem, wasn't it? I didn't give you the reaction you expected." Murmurs spread. Cameras clicked. The chair rapped her gavel. "Order." Ward glared. "You think you're untouchable. You wanted me to look bad. I wanted to live," Elijah said. The words landed like stone. Ward opened his mouth, then closed it again. The lawyer beside him whispered, "Stop talking." But Ward couldn't stop. The dam had cracked. "I didn't even know who you were. I've dealt with worse." You didn't know who I was," Elijah said, leaning forward. "That's the point. You didn't need to." The board chair cleared her throat. "Officer Ward, the panel has reviewed your body cam footage. Would you like to explain why the final minute is missing?" Ward froze. His lawyer whispered urgently, "Say there was a malfunction." Ward swallowed. "Malfunction." The chair raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Because, according to the data log, the device was manually deactivated." Gasps rippled through the room. Ward's voice cracked. "That's not true." The tech analyst from Internal Affairs rose. "We verified the time." Manual shut off. Exactly 2 seconds after the phrase, "People like you should remember who's in charge." Elijah closed his eyes briefly. Breathing out, Ward's lawyer stood. "We request recess denied," the chair said. "Continue." Ward's composure fractured. "He provoked me. He looked at me like I was beneath him." Elijah didn't respond. Ward slammed his hand against the table. "You think I'm racist. You think I hate you. I don't hate anyone. I'm just tired of being blamed for every—" The chair struck the gavel hard. "Officer Ward, control yourself." The silence that followed was long and suffocating. Elijah spoke quietly. "That's the same tone you used that night." Ward sank back into his chair, breathing ragged. The board members whispered among themselves. Notes passed. Frowns deepened. The chair finally said, "Officer Ward, given the evidence and your own statements, this board finds you in violation of departmental policy, specifically concerning abuse of authority and conduct unbecoming an officer." Ward's lawyer tried to protest, but the verdict was final. "You are hereby dismissed from the force, effective immediately." The room erupted, reporters shouting, cameras flashing, voices colliding. Ward sat frozen, staring at nothing. His badge lay on the table, gleaming faintly in the light. Elijah stood. He didn't look triumphant, only tired. As he turned to leave, Ward whispered, "You ruined me." Elijah stopped at the door. "No," he said quietly. "You did that the moment you forgot. The law protects everyone, not just the man holding the gun." Then he walked out. Outside, the crowd had gathered: students, activists, officers, reporters, microphones thrust toward him, voices demanding statements. Elijah raised a hand. "No comment." One reporter shouted, "Chief Justice Brooks, do you feel vindicated?" He paused. "No, justice isn't vindication, it's repair." He stepped into the waiting car. Marianne was inside, tablet open, reading headlines. "You just made history." Elijah shook his head. "No, I just told the truth in public." She looked at him. Same thing, these days. Back in the empty courtroom, Ward remained seated. His lawyer had left. The board had dispersed. The room was still. He picked up his badge. turned it over in his hands. The weight felt foreign now, like an artifact from someone else's life. Through the window, he saw the crowd dispersing. The man he'd tried to control walking freely down the courthouse steps. Ward whispered, "You were calm because you knew I'd lose." He didn't realize how wrong that was. Elijah hadn't known victory, only survival. And survival was never a win. That night, Elijah returned home to find Jordan waiting on the porch. "Did it happen?" "Yes," Elijah said. "Is he gone?" "Yes." Jordan nodded slowly. "Does that make it better?" Elijah looked out at the dark street. "No, but it makes it harder for them to forget." Jordan reached for his hand. "Then that's something." Elijah squeezed back. The rain began again, soft, rhythmic, endless. This time, it sounded less like applause, more like release. By morning, the footage of the hearing had gone viral. Every outlet carried it. The trembling voice, the missing body cam minute, the gavel strike. The city that once looked away could no longer pretend blindness. News anchors dissected each frame. Talk shows split screens between Elijah's calm restraint and Ward's unraveling fury. One commentator said, "That courtroom was America in microcosm." The police union issued a brief statement. "Officer Ward's dismissal does not reflect the values of the department." It was meant to sound definitive. Instead, it sounded hollow. Ward spent the day hiding indoors, curtains drawn, phone off, messages piling up, some threats, some pity, some disguised satisfaction. He opened one email by mistake, a reporter's inquiry. "Do you feel remorse for what happened?" He stared at the question until the screen dimmed. When Lisa came by that evening, he didn't answer the door. She knocked once more, then left an envelope on the mat. Inside was a single note. "Remorse isn't weakness. It's the first sign of having a conscience." Ward crumpled the paper, but his hand wouldn't throw it away. Across town, Elijah faced a different storm. His image dominated headlines. His courtroom composure was replayed like a sermon. His inbox overflowed with invitations, news panels, speaking tours, political endorsements. Marion entered his office holding a stack of interview requests. "Your national news," she said. "I didn't want that. You didn't have a choice." Elijah sat back, silent, outside the window. Camera crews lingered near the courthouse steps. Marion hesitated. "They want a statement about reform." He exhaled. "Then give them truth, not performance." "What should I say?" "That no law will matter until fear stops deciding who lives." Marion nodded slowly. "That'll hit hard." It should. By evening, a vigil formed on the courthouse lawn. Hundreds gathered with candles, signs, and quiet songs. Jordan stood beside his father, watching faces glow in the flickering light. A young woman approached Elijah. "Sir, my brother was stopped last year. No cameras, no hearing. Just fear." "You gave him a voice." Elijah's reply was soft. "He always had one. I just reminded people to listen." She smiled faintly. "You think they'll change?" He looked at the horizon, where police floodlights painted the clouds white. "They'll resist first, then deny. Then maybe, just maybe, they'll learn." Meanwhile, Ward sat in his dark living room watching the coverage. The screen showed Elijah at the vigil, surrounded by people holding signs. "Justice isn't enough. Dignity, too." Ward's reflection hovered beside Elijah's on the glass, two faces sharing one frame, divided by light. He whispered to no one, "You think you won?" The television flickered. The sound cut briefly, replaced by static. Ward turned it off. The silence pressed against his skull. He thought of his father, a cop before him, who used to say, "Respect is earned through control." For the first time, the phrase sounded like poison. The next morning, the newspaper headline read, "Chief Justice Brooks calls for national review of police conduct standards." The subhead, "Justice must mean safety for everyone." In smaller text below, "Former Officer Ward declines comment." A week later, Elijah spoke at a public forum. The auditorium was full, cameras humming softly. He stood without notes. "The system will say it's fixed because one man was fired, but firing isn't justice. Transformation is." Applause swelled, but he raised a hand to quiet it. "Real change will cost comfort. It always does." Someone shouted, "And what about forgiveness?" Elijah looked down for a moment, then answered, "Forgiveness isn't a pardon, it's a release from repeating the same lie." After the forum, he returned home. Jordan was waiting on the porch again, headphones around his neck. "They're saying you're the voice of reason," Jordan said. Elijah sat beside him. "Reason doesn't win hearts. Truth does." Jordan leaned back. You still think that guy, Ward, feels anything? Elijah didn't answer immediately. He will, one day, when silence starts talking back. They sat without speaking. Fireflies blinked in the humid air. At that same hour, Ward finally stepped outside for the first time in days. The street was empty. A lone newspaper sat on his stoop. His name on the front page looked smaller than before. He walked to the trash can to throw it away, then stopped. The sound of distant sirens drifted through the night. He closed his eyes. For a moment, he felt the weight of the badge again, not on his chest, but on his conscience. He turned and went back inside, leaving the door open behind him. The world kept moving. Headlines shifted. New scandals replaced old ones. But something in the city's air had changed. A tension, a watchfulness. Officers' voices softened during stops. Cameras stayed on longer. People recorded more. Change wasn't triumph. It was vigilance. End for Elijah. That was enough to begin. He stood at his window one evening, city lights shimmering against the glass, and said quietly to himself, "Power learns slowly, but truth waits forever." The rain began again, steady, relentless, cleansing. A month passed, the headlines faded, but the echoes remained. The city moved differently, subtly cautious, watchful, as if collective memory had grown new eyes. In the courthouse lobby, a new metal plaque had been mounted near the entrance. It read, "Justice begins with recognition." Below it, smaller text, dedicated to those silenced by power, and to those who refused silence. Elijah walked past it every morning without slowing, but he always noticed, it was a symbol, not a solution. Still, symbols mattered. The reform task force meetings began, in a sterile government office, with bad coffee and good intentions. City council members, police officials, and civil rights advocates sat around the table. Tension filled the room before anyone spoke. Councilwoman Vega began, "We can't rebuild trust without accountability." The deputy police commissioner countered, "Accountability without support destroys morale." Elijah listened quietly. When the voices grew louder, he finally said, "You're arguing over comfort while people argue with death." "Silence," he continued. "This isn't about bad apples, it's about bad roots. You can prune forever, or you can replant." The room fell still. Vega nodded slowly. "Then let's start digging." Outside the bureaucratic walls, resistance brewed. Police unions staged small protests. Anonymous letters accused Elijah of politicizing tragedy. Marion handed him a folder one morning, online chatters turning ugly. "Threats again." He glanced at it, then closed it. "They want me afraid. You should be careful." I'm just not quiet." Marion sighed. "You're running on fumes." Elijah smiled faintly. "I've been running on principle my whole life. Fumes are just another name for fire." Meanwhile, Ward lived in a half-empty apartment on the city's edge. The blinds stayed closed. His savings dwindled. No department would hire him. No union would defend him. He started working security at a warehouse midnights, fluorescent light humming overhead. Nobody said his name. Everyone just called him officer. It wasn't respect. It was mockery. He didn't drink much anymore. The liquor had stopped numbing. One night, during a break, he scrolled through his phone and found an article titled, "Brooks, Reform Act Gains National Attention." Beneath it was a photo of Elijah shaking hands with federal officials. Ward stared at it for a long time. The same face that had once stared at him through the windshield now stood behind podiums. He muttered to himself, "You won." But even as he said it, a small part of him knew the truth. It wasn't about winning, it was about enduring. Weeks later, a community panel invited both men to the same televised event and announced to the public, the network wanted a balanced dialogue. When Elijah arrived, he was told who else was coming. He froze for a moment, then nodded. "I'll stay." Ward entered minutes later, thinner, eyes hollow, wearing a plain jacket. The producer whispered, "You don't have to talk if you don't want to." He muttered, "I'll talk." The host began with the softest version of the story possible. "Tonight, we discuss reconciliation. Can the human spirit bridge division?" Elijah said nothing. Ward stared at the floor. The host turned to Ward first. "Do you regret that night?" Ward swallowed. The lights were too bright. His voice came rough. "I regret who I was. Not just that night before it. Every time I thought authority meant superiority. Every time I didn't see the person, just the threat." The host nodded, surprised. "And if you could speak directly to Chief Justice Brooks?" Ward turned slowly toward Elijah. Their eyes met. "I'd say I see it now. What it costs to stay calm when the world doesn't see you. Elijah didn't respond immediately. Then, seeing isn't enough, but it's a start. The host tried to pivot. Do you forgive him, Chief Justice? Elijah looked at Ward, then at the audience. Forgiveness is personal. I don't offer it to erase guilt. I offer it to end its ownership over me. The audience stayed silent. Cameras whirred softly. Ward looked down. Maybe that's all I deserve. Elijah replied quietly. Deserve isn't the question anymore. The host sensed the weight and ended early. The show faded to black before the applause started. Outside the studio, Ward waited near the curb. When Elijah exited, their eyes met again. Ward said, they wanted a spectacle. Elijah nodded. They always do. Ward hesitated. I can't fix what I broke. No, Elijah said, but you can stop pretending it wasn't broken. Ward nodded once. That's what I'm trying to do. Then keep trying. They didn't shake hands. There was no closure, only acknowledgement. Then Elijah walked away into the drizzle, and Ward didn't follow. Months later, Elijah testified before Congress on national policing standards. Cameras flashed, pens scratched. He said, the system doesn't need new slogans, it needs new reflexes. Because reflexes decide who walks home and who doesn't. That line made headlines again, but this time, even his critics couldn't twist it. Ward eventually left the city, took a job fixing fences on rural properties. He stopped introducing himself as a former officer. One afternoon, while mending a gate, he heard kids playing by the road. A ball rolled toward him. A black boy about 10 ran up to retrieve it. Ward picked it up, handed it back, and for the first time in years, managed to say the words, "Be careful, okay?" Not as a warning, but as concern. The boy smiled. Thanks, Mr. Ward watched him run off, dust rising behind his shoes. He exhaled and returned to his work. Elijah's life quieted but didn't slow. Awards came, invitations followed, but his nights remained restless. He'd walk the courthouse halls alone after hours, running his fingers along the new plaque. The metal was cold, solid, proof that something had changed. And yet, deep down, he knew change was never permanent. It required constant pressure, constant presence. Still, for the first time since that night, he allowed himself to feel something close to peace. That as he left one evening, he saw a janitor pause by the plaque, read the inscription, and nod to himself. That small gesture said more than any speech. Outside, the city lights shimmered on wet pavement. Rain again. Elijah raised his face to it. It felt the same as that night, cold, relentless, purifying. He whispered to no one, justice isn't an ending, it's the maintenance of truth. And somewhere far away, in a field under the same rain, Kellen Ward stopped working for a moment and looked up. Too, neither man spoke the other's name, but both understood the cost of sight. The world didn't change overnight, but two men had, irrevocably, and sometimes, that's how history begins. Spring arrived quiet that year. The city's air felt lighter, though not clean. Progress had left residue, a blend of hope and fatigue, like the scent of rain on concrete that never quite dries. Elijah Brooks stood beneath the new mural downtown, a wide, painted vision of unity commissioned by local students. At the center was a faceless figure in a suit holding a broken badge. Above it, the words, "Power sees clearer in reflection." He wasn't in the mural, but everyone knew who had inspired it. He didn't smile. Art wasn't absolution. It was remembrance. Marion approached with coffee. You ever going to let them name a street after you? Elijah took the cup. Streets change names. Work doesn't. You still giving lectures? To next week. One at the academy. She raised an eyebrow. Police academy. He nodded. Change doesn't happen by shouting from outside the building. Marion exhaled. You're walking back into the lion's den. I was never out of it. 2 days later, Elijah stood in front of a classroom full of new recruits. Young faces, tense shoulders, some avoided eye contact, some didn't blink. He began without notes. The badge you wear gives you power. Power means choices. Choices mean accountability. You'll learn the law, but law without conscience is just control. A hand rose. Sir, people say what you went through changed policing. Did it? Elijah paused. Not enough, but enough to make fear hesitate. Another asked, do you hate us? No, he said. I hate what happens when good men forget they're human first. Silence, heavy, honest. He dismissed them without applause. That night, he walked through the same neighborhood where the stop had happened. The gas station lights glowed pale blue against the wet asphalt. For a moment, it was all the same, the hum of the streetlight, the faint echo of distant sirens. But there was no fear now, only memory. He stood by the curb and whispered, still standing. Across the state line, Kellen Ward lived quietly. The land he worked didn't care about history. The soil forgave everything. He woke before dawn, mended fences, ate alone. The rhythm steadied him. Sometimes he thought about reaching out, but there was no reason. Forgiveness wasn't a request. It was a process. He read about Elijah's speech at the academy in a newspaper left at a diner. Beneath it, a quote was printed bold: "Law must protect the powerless, or it isn't law." Ward folded the page carefully and put it in his jacket pocket. Later that evening, he mailed a letter, no return address. It read only, "I heard your words. I understand now. Thank you for holding the mirror." He didn't expect an answer. He just needed to send it. Weeks later, Elijah received the letter among piles of correspondence. No name, no signature, just those few lines. He read it once, twice, then he set it on his desk and didn't move for a long time. Marion found him there later. "You okay?" He nodded slowly. "Sometimes justice doesn't shout, it whispers." Months passed. The reforms he'd proposed spread across state lines. Training programs changed, protocols adjusted. None of it was perfect, none of it ever would be, but cracks had opened in the old armor. One evening, Jordan visited his father's office. "They're studying your case in civics now," he said. "You're a chapter." Elijah looked up from his papers. "Chapters end, that's the point." Jordan smirked. "You always talk like a book." Elijah smiled faintly. "Better than living like a headline." They laughed softly, the sound of survival turning back into life. Later that night, Elijah walked home through the quiet streets. Rain again, as if the city couldn't stop cleansing itself. At a crosswalk, he noticed a police cruiser slow near the intersection. The officer inside nodded politely. Elijah nodded back. No tension, no threat, just acknowledgement. He crossed as the light turned green. At home, he stood at his window, the city shimmering below, the plaque in the courthouse, the mural, the reform committees, all small victories. But the real change, he knew, was invisible. The hesitation before harm, the pause before prejudice. He whispered, almost to the rain, "That's where healing begins." The streetlights flickered in agreement. He turned off the lamp, letting the room fill with darkness, not as fear, but as rest. Outside, somewhere miles away, a man who once wore a badge stood in the same rain, eyes closed, letting it fall. No apologies, no speeches, just the sound of consequence settling into the soil. And for the first time, both men, once bound by violence, now by reflection, felt something close to peace, not closure, not redemption, just restoration.